My name is Josepha. I'm the growth marketing lead at Climate Choice. And as always, I'm super happy to have all of you with us today. And it's actually a beautiful, sunny autumn day here, at least in Berlin. So I hope that we can also bring the sunshine to you on Scope 3 Action via this webinar. Now, if you haven't joined us so far, you will discover that this choice event is actually a beautiful platform for all of us to dive into one of the most impactful and, let's be honest, also oftentimes most complex areas of climate action, namely Scope 3 decarbonization. And if you're wondering who we are, well, we are Climate Choice, your climate intelligence platform and companion, enabling all sustainability and procurement folks out there, so hopefully all of you too, to go beyond manual data collection and reporting by helping you gather supplier-specific emission data, build actionable decarbonization roadmaps together with your ecosystem partners, and embed climate into business decision-making and across your value chain. Because as we will also see today, Scope 3 is not just about data, it's about structures, ownership, and collaboration. And this is exactly also what today's session is all about. Now, that being said, what we want to do today is to deep dive into the critical role of procurement as climate enabler, because when we talk about Scope 3, procurement is still pretty often considered to function under the limitations or constraints of cost pressure, data gaps, and supplier complexity. But what if it could actually be the opposite? What if procurement could become one of the strongest levers for real climate transformation? And this is what we will be exploring today. And I'm especially excited because we are looking at a company where procurement is actually driving sustainability from the inside out. Not pushed top down, but really embedded across teams, built into supplier collaboration, and activated through real world tools like carbon pricing and data integration. And that company is Essity, a global hygiene and health leader behind brands like Tina and Tempo and many, many more. And our guest is nobody else than somebody who is playing a very key role in turning Essity's ambition into operational reality. And that guest is Nicole Anderson-Brodin, the Sustainability Procurement Manager at Essity, and one of the most, I find, thoughtful voices I've met so far to shape procurement into a climate positive force. Now, Nicole will be taking us behind the scenes of Essity's journey from setting up a sustainable procurement function to launching joint supplier programs for net zero. She will also share very personal insights onto what works, what's hard, and how to keep momentum in such an increasingly dynamic business and regulatory landscape. And with that, a very warm welcome to the virtual stage, Nicole. Thank you so much for being here today. We are very thrilled to have you.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone, and I hope you're having a wonderful day so far.
Yeah, and I hope you are also having a wonderful day so far. How is it going?
It also happens to be sunny here in Sweden as well, so we'll take it.
Nice. And Nicole, I mean, I'm very sure that everybody is looking forward to finding out more about Essity's journey in Scope 3. But maybe let's start at the beginning and be a little bit more personal. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your very own professional journey. How come that you're now such a thought leader in the field of sustainable procurement?
So I love thinking about my own journey, sometimes reflecting on where I've come from and where I am now. I've had roles in operations, in heavy manufacturing, in large global climate, where working in scope 1 and 2, with a little bit in 3. But this is my first role in procurement. And I say this all the time, it also happens to be my favorite role thus far out of everything that I've done. But it's really morphed from maybe more corporate sustainability or operations into, just working on scope 3, and within scope 3, categories 1 to category 4. So the scope gets more narrow. However, the complexity just gets greater and greater. But I think working within scope 3 is incredible because it's this more collaborative approach, and that makes it very fun and exciting.
Nice. Yeah, so you're drilling down in scope, but yeah, as you're saying, the challenges, but I think also the opportunities that you will be showing to us today are definitely not getting less. So yeah, very excited to have you, really. And I mean, I have to say, we already met at the last Climate Transformation Summit too, and you've been, like participating. Then everybody afterwards came to me and was like, "Hey, Joseph and Nicole, so great. We would love to hear more about Essity's story." So I'm very happy that we have you here with us today, so that also the audience who haven't joined us at the last Climate Transformation Summit now is the chance to get some of your insights and also your motivation. I always find it very inspiring and motivating talking to you. So thanks a lot. But now, as always, we are also joined by my wonderful colleague and co-founder of Climate Choice, Lara Obst. And Lara will actually come in more towards the end of the session to connect the dots, let's say, between today's story of Essity and the bigger question many of you are potentially also asking yourselves. And this is, how can we upskill and set up our procurement function to really make carbon a part of daily business in order to use it for the positive side of driving scope 3 reduction, business resilience, and cost and competitive advantage, without maybe on the negative side getting stuck in the perfect data trap and lose resources on this. So with that, hi Lara, great to have you with us again today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm super happy today joining from Zurich. And actually, just as we started the webinar, also here the sun comes out, but it has been like 3 days just full of rain. So maybe we shouldn't be sitting in front of the computer, but go out for a walk. But we can all do that after, I guess. And yeah, super excited for that webinar as well. Like it was great to have Nicole in Berlin sharing her journey and now share it online. But then really also, yeah, look into this intersection between getting data from suppliers and then making them actionable in collaboration with working with them. So yeah, looking forward to that discussion in the end.
Yeah, thank you. And Lara, I mean, as always, right, it's nice to present to the audience who we are, but then we would also love to know who's actually with us. And I'm pretty certain that you have prepared a short survey that you would like to guide the audience through right now in order to also activate everybody.
Yes, let's do that together. So you have heard about us three women here on stage. So I love that specifically. But now we can have a look who's joining us today. So no worries, we don't ask for your gender, but it's also anonymously. First question is like, yeah, in which role are you working currently on Scope 3 action as sustainability manager? In procurement, in maybe data and quality, innovation manager, or other, because we learn, yeah, there is more and more roles coming up, responsibilities, people tackling this topic. And then if you scroll down, there's actually a second question, a little bit hidden. So there is like, yeah, in which kind of, or in this role, are you already part of a Scope 3 community ecosystem and so on? So we're going to look later into collaboration along the supply chain. So maybe you have started already kind of a supply chain engagement journey or not. Maybe you are engaged in one of those. So have you already looked beyond the data into collaboration? That's basically the question. And with that, I gave you a little bit time and I can, I think, stop and share also the result with you. You should see it on the screen. So we have still the biggest answer, 35% of you are joining as sustainability manager. And I think that's awesome. You probably have exactly the task to look into decarbonization and data management. But then as we see, like 15% are already from procurement, and then 15% innovation managers, and also 30% from other departments or roles, so to say. So that's very exciting. And then almost half of you, like 45%, say they are already part of in community ecosystem engagement whatsoever along Scope 3, so in the supply chain. But then also half of you are not yet there or are planning to look into it. So both of you or both groups going to learn a lot. So either how to scale it and go deeper or how to set everything up. So, Nicole, I hope that gives you an idea who's joining today.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you everybody for voting. And I think, Nicole, this actually, even though most of the people are sustainability managers, I think this is exactly what we will be talking about, because you are all about integrating the different functionalities and not looking at sustainability as something separate, but really bringing it into the procurement function. So I believe, this is really, you're talking there to the right audience today. And that being said, also everybody who wants to, engage with Nicole, throughout this call. Even though you're not on video, you all have the chance to actually participate by introducing your questions. So you can just, at the bottom part of your screen, then also hand in questions, and I will try to voice them out, the best way I can, and ask them to Nicole. And the ones that we don't answer throughout this call, well, we will have Nicole then answering it writtenly afterwards. Sorry, Nicole, I actually just said that we will be doing it like that, but I guess I can count on you.
Gonna make it happen.
Absolutely.
Answers.
Cool, very good. And with that, Nicole, why don't we kick it off and get you started?
Absolutely. Let me see if we get this up. Okay, so does this come on the screen well?
We're still in the PowerPoint mode now. Perfect. Here we are. Very good.
All right. So as the ladies have said, we are talking a little bit about procurement as a lever to enable climate action, and a bit on how we do that at Essity. But who in the heck are we? I get this question all the time. So I thought it would be good to just share a few of our brands. We are a global health and hygiene company. For a little bit of context, we have 72 production locations over the world. So that's just a quick bit of who we are. I always find that it's good to have a little bit of context as to whom you are listening to. In procurement, I like to say we have a North Star when we're talking about climate action. Naturally, we have a target type North Star, as we are a net zero company, and we have had our net zero and our near-term 2030 targets validated by the Science Based Targets Initiative. So we have targets set. We do use those in our structure. And I think the net zero is a really good North Star for us to be thinking about. I'd like to take just a second to talk a little bit on how we're organized. Again, I think this is really important to put into context on how we're able to do what we do in global procurement. So within our C-suite, we have a Chief Sustainability and Strategy Officer. Now, that role is new to us as of January 2025, but the Chief Strategy Officer has been with us for several years. So she has also taken on sustainability. So we have kind of married sustainability and strategy within the C-suite, which is fabulous from my perspective. So I have very high hopes for the future. Then we have 4 individual business units that are responsible for their own P&L. And then underneath that, we have global functions, one being global supply chain, where global procurement lives. So also where sustainable procurement lives. We have a sustainable procurement team here. There are 4 of us, but we all have different focus areas. So my focus area is, of course, the climate question and decarbonization. We also have human rights and ethics, anti-corruption, and diversity, equity, inclusion, inclusive procurement. So that's just a little bit about that. We do have sustainability throughout our businesses. That's why you see we have a sustainable procurement function. We have sustainability within global marketing and innovation. We have sustainability within our business units. So each kind of function has people responsible for sustainability. So there's a lot of collaboration that is needed in order to really have this go forward in a good way. Within procurement, I think we have a really big opportunity and scope here working with all of our raw material suppliers. So again, today for context, I won't really be talking about indirect or services procurement. This will be focused on what we are doing within raw materials. So I hope that helps provide a little bit of context. But we need to really be the ones kind of out in front, because those relationships with the suppliers are owned by those procurement managers. So they really need to set the tone of where we are and where we want to go. We do a lot of that when we're talking about carbon data. So you'll hear a lot of data coming through in this presentation, but making sure that we're always collaborative and empowering our partners. We really don't want to be well, let's put it this way. I'm a bit of a carrot person, not a stick person, if that makes sense. But that the change has to be systemic. We have to put this through everything that we do, through our processes, to really embed it in how we are making decisions. And that does not happen overnight. And also that we really need to make this change now. 2030 is swiftly upon us, and things take time to bring to fruition. So I also need to tell you all this. We have a running joke here in global procurement at Essity that I was not hired to make PowerPoint presentations. They are terrible at absolute best. So it is a bit of a joke. My slides are used as humor. So you can feel free to laugh at them yourselves. It's fine. I had a slide that kind of put together our whole journey, and I was like, oh, we're getting too deep here, so we're just going to take each one step by step. So first, what we really needed to do, and of course, I think is very understandable to all of you out there, to prioritize what do we need to focus on and make sure that we are evaluating that from carbon perspective, whether it's a spend perspective, whatever matters to your business. So of course, we work with things that we call our key raw materials. So these are the largest by spend, the largest by volume, the largest by emissions impact. So that we call them key raw materials. So if you hear me say that throughout, I hope that helps a little bit. Naturally, it's really good to establish that baseline in what that impact looks like for what is material for your business. And you can do that in a multitude of ways. I will say that from baseline, or what we are working with now from a data perspective, we have a little bit of a hierarchy of data. Not everything comes from our suppliers. Some is calculated from what suppliers provide to our team of LCA experts. Some is provided as product carbon footprints or environmental product declarations from suppliers, but some is based on industry average, because there has been too many suppliers to reach out to. So it is a process, and we are certainly not perfect. We are changing and growing and doing this every day. So I say here that it really needs to be iterative. It will change. You will get more data. It will become better. It will get more granular. But it's okay that those things don't happen right away.
And Nicole, one question, can you maybe go back one slide for this piece of, so you mentioning, right, that you start with what's available, even if the data set might be still incomplete. I think at this point, it very much becomes clear that Scope 3 is also about people change management, right? So how do you actually convince your internal stakeholders that good enough is sometimes better than perfect?
Let me tell you, that was very challenging in the beginning. But I think when everybody's willing to step out of what makes them feel comfortable, and they're more comfortable with being uncomfortable, you can understand it from that perspective of going, okay, why would you need this other type of data, for example? Why can't we wait maybe for perfect? That, okay, it is good to have this baseline. Let's just say we're working with industry average, everything, everywhere. That can still help you understand what materials to focus on. Okay, if you didn't already know that, you could say, okay, well, here it is. This is a high impact material. Now we can work on getting better and better data. But it really, you have to get people to start being comfortable with being uncomfortable and let them know what you are using this data for. Why does it matter? What is important about the data? So I think that has been helpful for us. And like I said, we get better and better at this with literally every month that goes by. It's not even a year thing at this point. It's, a few months go by and we have better data. We have more clarity, more understanding, a new material that we're working with. But we're to the point now where people understand that data is important, even if we're starting at a baseline of industry average, that it will get better.
So, I mean, you also go via the experience then, right? So using this incomplete data, or maybe not perfect one, but still sitting down with your team, reflecting, okay, what does it tell us? Okay, we can move a step further and then iterate and get better, as you mentioned before. Thank you. And then, Nicole, there was another question, just a very short one, where somebody was asking also in the chat, what is not PCF, but environmental product footprint, the terminology that you mentioned. Can you maybe just quickly elaborate on that? It comes from Emily.
An environmental product declaration, or an EPD, is run by an international organization. So it is your full impact of any given material, but done in a very certain manner where it is verified through EPD International, for example. So it's very strict rules and guidelines, and then a verification at the end. So the upstream part of an EPD is still a product carbon footprint. It's just done under very tight constraints. It does cost quite a lot of money to do these things, so they're not overly common, but we do see them in some materials.
All right, thank you. I hope this then also helped Emily. Thank you. All righty, then, you're very welcome to move forward.
So some of what was also really important when we kind of began climate action in procurement in a big way, it's always been around, but in a really big way, when we're like, we need to get a hold of this. We needed to have a solid foundation of knowledge, both in our organization, with organizations that we connect with internally, and with our supply partner base. It was a lot of kind of one-off conversations that we just needed to say, okay, here it is. Here's what we expect. So we did this with a lot of speaking with our businesses and categories. And when I say those types of things, business categories are, those particular brands might have a segment of that brand. We did an Ask Me Anything session for global procurement, because there were a lot of questions on, well, what exactly are science-based targets? How does that affect me? So we needed to make sure that we were being very clear, even when you don't know things, because things will change, and just being able to tell your organization, this is what we know now, and this is what it looks like now. But that could be different in the future, and we will keep you informed of that every step of the way. So from an internal perspective, there was a lot of communication that needed to happen. And we work in these things called supply stream teams. I'm going to talk about that just briefly because you'll hear me say an SST or supply stream team again, because they're very important in the way we work. So a supply stream team is run by global procurement, so the category manager for that particular material. Then it has a material innovation manager. So that is an R&D individual who is tasked with really seeing what is the future of that material. It also has a material optimization manager. So that is another R&D individual who really works with our manufacturing sites and how are we ensuring that we're doing the best with that material now. Our supplier quality manager for that material. And then you have myself representing this part of sustainable procurement, because we know sustainable procurement has more things than just climate. So that's a supply stream team. And what I think is unique and fabulous about that is you're cross-functional already. And that supply stream team really is what faces the business and those brand categories in conversations about what materials or suppliers or what things could look like now and in the future. Okay, sorry, got that out of the way. But also we needed a solid foundation with our supply partners. So we did a webinar where we had 270 suppliers live, and we called it Collaborating for Climate. And this was a good way of just setting those expectations from the beginning. What does climate action mean to Essity? And then we continue that conversation in our business review meetings, and sometimes other larger sustainability meetings, which we might come to that.
And Nicole, just one quick question also on this piece, right? I mean, when you just look basically at the huge scale of Essity, I mean, it's an organization touching thousands not only of customers each day, but I guess also business partners. You're operating on a global scale, having a decentralized organization. How can you, share or maintain this like unified messaging across internal and external stakeholders? I mean, what is, like one key point where you're saying like, hey, this is, something that you've learned throughout the last couple of months? What was key to it?
Oh, talking loud and often. Always with the same message, always the same message, again and again and again and again. And I know that sounds just tragic, but it is the best way to go about it. Just always remember, what do you need to make clear? And you're going to have to make that clear again. So it was also a good lesson to be learned on my part, because I thought that maybe it could be a one and done in the beginning. I was wrong. And I learn on how to communicate more and more and more every day as well. Like it's just, whether it's in presentations or and also coming across unified. So when procurement is talking, it's procurement talking, a supply stream team talking, and you have everybody aligned together. We also align a lot with our sustainability controlling function. They are part of group finance, and they are the ones that are the one source of truth for the numbers at the end of the day. So there's a lot of collaboration there, and we make sure that our two functions also have a unified message.
So even though you feel like you would be repetitive, not forget about the fact that everybody else in other functions has a very different focus point potentially. So for them, it's not repetitive. Yeah, thank you. All right. The floor is yours again.
So now we'll talk a little bit about data and commitment and collaboration and what we are doing with our supply partners. So during that webinar that we had, so again, solidifying that foundation, we launched our climate action contract, which centered around 5 pillars of things that we would like our partners to commit to doing. And in one of those pillars, it is assessing their emissions and providing product carbon footprints. We're coming back to that kind of data part again. And this then becomes very important, because as you're talking to your partners, there will be some that are able to provide that now. There are some that might be looking for that they might be able to provide that in a year or two. And there will be some that will ask you, what is a product carbon footprint? All of those are perfectly valid answers. So you as a business need to decide, how do you want to handle that? Again, so you have some sort of consistency, but in those conversations with our partners, we realized that even though we were putting forth our climate action contract where it asks for PACT or Together for Sustainability, Greenhouse Gas Protocol, ISO type product carbon footprints, it wasn't quite clear enough. So we went back and developed a product carbon footprint guideline to really walk through all the questions that we would have. And it was not a how to do their calculation, but really a what we needed to understand behind the calculation, because what we did want to come out of the exercise was that we were comparing maybe red apples to green apples and not apples to bananas. So now we feel confident, and I think our supply partners feel confident that they are providing us the data that we need to start really embedding that into our decisions. So continuing on that commitment is that climate action contract for us and these conversations that we have with our partners. But you need to move that into that cross-functional collaboration. So again, we lean on these supply stream teams to really help us do that, because some of those members of the SSTs will have conversations with the suppliers where global procurement is not in that call, because they have their technical counterparts. But when you're all on the same page and you're speaking with one voice, those conversations can actually help rather than hinder. We get into really partnerships with our suppliers. This is where we've had, I would say we've had a lot of fun. I will give one particular, or maybe a couple of examples. One is within an entire supply stream where we have all of our partners that provide this material speaking the same way, providing data in a similar manner. We are looking at forecasting those emissions. We have these conversations quarterly. And when we started out with those suppliers, the conversation sounded like this. Well, our science-based targets are blah, 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 blah. And this is where we were as of 2022, blah, 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 blah. Then they had their presentation. These are our corporate targets, blah, 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 blah. At the end of that conversation, what did we really get? What did either company get? Not much. That didn't really dig into what mattered to the heart of our shared business relationship. But now, the suppliers in that stream, we don't talk like that at all. I don't at all give an update on where we are on our science-based targets as a corporation. But I do talk about where they might be from a benchmark perspective in that data. Are they higher than average, lower than average? Do we need more? Do we need to be looking at different types of raw materials? You know, the conversation is just completely different, and in a really, really great way. We even are to the point of forecasting those emissions to 2030. So with our supply partners, not just us looking at, oh, corporately, they committed to this. So let's say their product carbon footprint is going to be that by 2030. Now, we're really doing this in a good way. And it's starting to open up very transparent conversations. And I like to say it like this: sustainability really gives you the umbrella to have a lot of conversations very differently than you had before. So on that note, I'll talk about a little bit of a net zero, or we'll call it net zero. We called it a sustainability summit with a particular partner, and that partner happens to supply multiple different materials to us. So again, these supply stream teams that I talk about are material specific. So this particular partner provides into multiple supply streams. Well, that makes it a bit messy on our side, right? Because we're organized in a very particular way. So we were coming at that supplier from all these different directions, not cohesive at all. Even if they might have had the same message, we need to reduce our emissions, what can we do? It was quite foggy for us and for them. So we got together, the kind of more corporate or global entities of the two businesses, to say, how can we do this differently? And we had a large sustainability summit where we got everybody involved. And all of a sudden, you saw the walls just dropped. And we were able to talk about things in a way of saying, you know, it makes it very difficult for us to do X, Y, or Z when you X, Y, or Z. And they could do the same. And we said, wow, we didn't know that. Okay, so if we do this in a different way, which is helping us to really tie climate action into the business for them and for us. It's beneficial for both companies on how are we going to innovate together. So that was one thing that I think we're really proud of, that is able to take shape, and hopefully we'll have the second one with that particular company in 2026, and just carry this movement going forward. And from that, we stemmed into about 10 other partners that were working in a similar way. Even if they don't provide multiple materials, it's not the same level of complexity, but still working in that same way of saying, here's where we are now, here's where we need to go, what can we do together? What does that mean for our shared business?
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, what you're also depicting here is actually this piece of like vulnerability, right? Or of actually like yeah, just showcasing where you stand, like being honest to one another in this field. Because I mean, what we see across also our customer base at Climate Choice is that, yeah, of course, there are so many open questions, even though some companies are very much further ahead maybe than others, but yet it's a whole like discovery phase that you're tackling. So thanks for sharing this. And I guess, I mean, also a question to you now that you have this very positive example with one supplier. I guess this is also a learning path for you, how to then engage with the others, right? So it's taking this like very first step with one, seeing how is it going, and then applying it to all the others.
Exactly. And that's another part. Sometimes you have to be transparent with your own organization. I mean, you just say, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing, but are you guys willing to try? Okay, if you are, great. And it has taken us far, I would say.
Yeah. Very good. Cool. And then, Nicole, we agreed that I give a quick hint on the time. And I'm very sure that everybody here on the call is still very much interested in how you really embed carbon into procurement, also on a decision level function. So let's maybe have a look into that.
So I'll just breeze over this really quick. Of course, you have to make sure that everyone is set up for success, right? So we are working on some training for our category managers that will go live October 14th. Anybody who wants to know how we're doing this or what partner we're utilizing to do this, just, you know, reach out to Josefa. I'm happy to answer those questions. So we can kind of skip over this, but capability building is important. Okay, but working with the data and embedding this into decision making. So again, I'm going to come back to the supply streams. I'm sorry, but it just is the way we're organized. So let's take an example of a supply stream that has 5 providers of a given material. That supply stream, once you have the data in any shape or form, as long as you're clear on what it is. If you have this and it's industry average, you have this and it was supplier provided, you have this, it's third-party verified, supplier provided, whatever. We have laid that out in Excel. Yes, we still work in Excel. So that supply stream can see, well, here is the material we buy, all the different grades of that material, all the different sites around the world from any given supplier that we buy that from. And here is its corresponding product carbon footprint and the corresponding volumes that we purchase. So you put that all together and then you can see, okay, well, this is where we will likely end up, right? Because we know what the volumes might be, but to end 2025, for example, so you can already predict, well, this is what we believe it will be in 2025. But then if you do something as a volume weighted average, so you get a volume weighted average product carbon footprint there. Now you can really start to work with that. So we have a carbon budget because we know what our science-based targets are, right? To 2030. That is clear. That is a 35% reduction. We know what the base year was and what we have put as the base information for any given material. So now we know how much carbon we can spend in 2030. Volume weighted average PCF is whatever it is in 2025. What do we need that to be in 2030 in order to hit that target? This helps procurement start to say, okay, how can we move that puzzle together and put it into place? Because, you know, we still have to keep up multi-sourcing. It's incredibly important to mitigate risk. And as I had said before, we have over 70 production sites. So naturally, we don't have the luxury of saying, well, this is the lowest carbon supplier of any given material done. That could never work in our business. So, but how to still make that puzzle fit? So that's one way that we work with that. The second way that we work with this is the forecasting with our suppliers onto what that PCF number might be in 2030. So again, then we're seeing, where do we think we're going to be in 2030? Then where's that gap to target? When you can identify a gap to target, then you can really start having conversations with your business and with your supply partners on how to close that gap. Because in our world, a lot of what might close that gap are low carbon feedstocks, which I will be honest, are extremely expensive. It's not just something you're going to just decide to do. You really have to do this very cautiously and with intent. So enough about that. So once you have this kind of forecast and you're seeing this gap to target, then you can use the scenarios and say, well, if we did A, here would be the cost. Here would be the carbon we could remove. This is your cost per carbon. So now we're talking a bit about also not just carbon pricing, but the abatement cost of what would be in there to 2030. So then you layer that with carbon pricing, saying, okay, here's the tender that we ran in any given year. Now, what does that look like, those tender answers, when you add a price of carbon? Now, you do have to have that data in order to do so. And if you want to know how we work with the methodology, it is the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. It is a methodology developed by them and so many companies. I've been happy to sit in those working groups as well. So the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, carbon pricing methodology, there you go. So that's a way that we can talk to our business. So when we face the business, we can say, look, here are, our projected volumes and suppliers and cost. And this is what that all looks like in carbon. So that when you do get those questions of, well, can't we just move to this very low cost over here? Sure. But there might be a carbon implication. And does that then equal that same low cost? Now, I am not saying that we will make any decisions based on this, but it is so vital to be able to illustrate what that would look like so that businesses can make very educated and data-driven decisions. We will be working towards external carbon pricing where we're actually building that in a tender, but we will look at piloting that in 2026. So there will be, more to come there. We're in just lots of talks of how do we do that? And we made the decision that we want to prepare our supply partners before just coming out with it. So we're working on that preparation stage. Yeah, and we hope that helps kind of set the tone of what really matters to us going forward.
So interesting. I mean, I would have thousands of questions, and I also see some in the chat that we can't answer right now due to time constraints. But I mean, the conversation will for sure go on. So let's see, what kind of forum we can create for you to give us a more detailed insight even into this whole piece of carbon budgeting, but then also the forecasting piece. I find it very interesting beyond all the other, so to say, juggling priorities that you're having there. So very, very interesting. And I mean, let's create, something together where you can present this in more detail. All right. And I think there's one last piece of you giving us some do's and don'ts, right? Some key lessons learned.
We'll skip over this. There was a lot of text on this before also, but I took it off. But there are tools that procurement has at their disposal in order to really work with decarbonization. That's a story for another day. But just a few takeaways. I would say it's really important to understand that every function has a role to play. That's every function within your internal business, but also every function within procurement. Procurement excellence, your analysts, your procurement admin, your buyers, your big category managers, everyone has a role to play here. And keeping up that level of engagement for everyone, I think, is really important. Everybody matters. And every function internally matters. Some of the things that we think works utilizing that supplier data in negotiations, whether that is in the form of explaining where any given partner is versus your average. Do you need to maybe negotiate a lower carbon footprint in exchange for something? I mean, you have a lot of things at your disposal, payment terms, contract lengths. We could go on forever. It's very important to illustrate carbon in your decision-making process. Again, not saying that anybody is going to say, oh, we're definitely choosing that because of carbon. Now, yes, I hope someday that happens, but until that day comes, if you are illustrating at least what that decision means from a carbon perspective and what maybe that abatement cost of carbon would be, it's very helpful. Working with the data, you're never going to go wrong when you're working with data and integrating data into your decision making. You already do it in other ways. This is just one more piece of data. Super important to focus on those collaborations and partnerships. And again, this is my opinion, so I'm sorry. I don't feel that the pressure really works Once you have a partnership, if you feel you need to put on a little pressure because you're not getting results, that's another thing. But we're all in this together, and it's good for all of us to recognize that there's space for us to collaborate. Be transparent, be open, say you don't know things, say it's the first time. It doesn't matter. Scope 3 will always be all of us fumbling around in the dark trying to do our best. It'll be that in 5 years as well, because something will change or be different. So it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. I can tell you some of our supply partners, are so much better at this than I will ever be. I love the chance of getting to learn from them. Innovate together while remaining cost conscious. This is why procurement is a huge lever for decarbonization, as procurement can find the way to do this in the most financially responsible manner. I will stress that over and over again until the day I have died. And again, collaboration, essential for the impact. It takes you guys doing it together, shared business spaces, and that could be collaboration within your own internal functions as well. Essential for that impact.
Nice. Thank you so much, Nicole. Really, I mean, it was such a powerful, really deep dive into how you and I mean, the entire Essity team, I guess, is embedding sustainability into procurement, from carbon budgeting to supplier empowerment and much more. And I think what really stood out to me again is that climate action in procurement is really not about perfection, at least not in the beginning, right? But it's about progress and about experiencing this progress in order to motivate then also the entire team to actually stick to it. And I guess also what's important, I mean, because it's such a huge enterprise, you can't just assign sustainability as a task. It should be a mindset, right? So that everybody is actually pulling it forward. And I think this is a perfect transition actually to Lara, because when we speak about turning data into action, Lara has such a vast experience also with many different companies. And she's here today to share a quick outlook, at least, on how companies move beyond this perfect data trap in order to really bring data into procurement to drive Scope 3 decarbonization at scale. So Lara, I'm super happy to hand it over to you right now.
Yeah, and thanks yet again, Nicole. Like, I really love that individual journey, so to say, to show, like, I think you said everyone is tumbling in the dark a little bit, and maybe it doesn't have to feel like it all the time. So that's why we do also the webinars, to really share knowledge. But that's also what we see in all of these companies happening. So actually, when we talk right now with sustainability procurement leaders, I'm super excited to actually have those roles. So as we saw in the beginning, it mainly is still a topic in sustainability, sometimes in procurement, but if you have both responsibilities joined in one person or a team, that's amazing. But then we also always see, like, all these challenges come to the sustainability procurement leader. And as much as you would love to have that person, maybe rather a super motivated person, which Nicole is, I think a perfect example. But then, motivation is not enough. You really need data these days. And you need it from hundreds and thousands of suppliers. And you don't just need to collect this data, but you want to make it actionable and really bring it into feedback to the suppliers to then engage together and not just go into reporting, but into real actions. So that's what we do at Climate Choice with our climate intelligence platform, to really look in these three topics. So how to collect the data from suppliers and really make it at scale, and to use it for benchmarking, and then really provide feedback to the suppliers to get them involved and really engage, and then bring it into action that really form a decarbonization strategy. But as much as we love really to say it's all about the data, it's also all about the actions altogether. So what Nicole said, right? It feels like often you have to start from scratch, or like tumble in the dark and build it all up for yourself. So that's why we 2 years ago now started the Climate Action Group, which has already more than 50 companies in there. And yeah, I would say not just companies, but like really individual person from sustainability to procurement, so sustainability, procurement, data quality, and so on, where we really work together in engaging suppliers, but then also sharing best practices. And yeah, how we do that is that every half a year, actually just last week, the last group has started, which is now number 5. Every half year, we do like a 3-month module where we onboard our community members in 3 months, and we go through these 3 steps, which I think were similar to what Nicole shared, like really learning where the data is from your suppliers, where the suppliers stand in terms of maturity, and then using the data to go into action. And then really bring everyone together in that community in our webinars, also the summit, and different meetups. And as I saw the question in the chat, I'm going to use some time to look into that, even though I thought to skip this part. So what are we doing exactly in this community, but then also, yeah, working in general with our companies, customers, is like that the first need is really, okay, you have maybe worked so far with average data, spend-based data. And then if you really want to come towards reaching your scope 3 targets, you want to not just have the company level data, but at one point, the perfect data from the PCF, so the product carbon footprints. But the reality is, most of the suppliers, if you look at hundreds and thousands, are not yet there. So what you first need to do is build internally in your company the data structure, infrastructure, and capabilities to really understand which data points you need, but then also to screen your supply chain and see who's actually in which maturity before you send like a long survey to send the perfect PCF data. You really might want to first do your homework and see, and we are using our platform, leveraging AI to screen the supply chain and say, who's in level 1, so has no data, probably needs a lot of support. Who's in level 2, where you find already indications that they are doing their carbon footprint on company level and or on product level already. And then level 3, who of those has not just done their homework in doing calculations, and maybe some outdated calculations sometimes, but who's really on track, having their own science-based targets, decarbonization roadmap, maybe building new products and business models, and with whom can you go into collaboration to, we have examples of bringing up circularity maybe as a model, a new company model, or like reducing emissions by having more effective production and so on. And then also not making it just a one-time stop thing, so to say, but a continuous journey where you use that data, not just to collect it, but that's also what Nicole shared now in the future upcoming, maybe bringing also climate decisions into procurement. So really say, okay, we have a measurable scorecard, we have a benchmark, we have a baseline from where we move, and then bring from all of your suppliers the maturity higher, and maybe also make decisions in like 3, 4, 5 years to say, okay, we're going to transition out of fossil fuels, we're going to transition out of procuring from suppliers that don't have science-based targets, or whatever fits to your strategy. So having said that, I skip over the how to use the platform in that. What it all comes down in the community is that we end after these 3 months with an individual action plan, which you present then also to the others. It's an online journey where you then get feedback also from the community, and where you are prepared to kick off your supply chain program, so to say, and where you are maybe turning into a happy sustainability procurement leader who's not just overwhelmed, but has an awesome community, a lot of best practices, and then really data that you can make actionable for your scope 3. And I know we are a little bit late in time, but I'm happy to answer some questions if there are some. And Josefa, you're muted, but I think...
Sorry. I think there's one question in the chat that we can actually take to the two of you to round this up. And it's from Nico Schweigert, and he was asking, so everything cool frameworks, but now how do we actually go into implementation, particularly once the scope 3 changes or transformation starts to cost something? So what is your key advice on that piece? I think this could like really nicely round up the discussion for today.
I mean, from my perspective, of course, it's not all going to come for free. But again, if you can illustrate that abatement cost of carbon, you can show how much carbon can you remove from the board for what amount of money. So you can find the most effective way of doing this. Yes, it's a difficult conversation, but if it matters to your business and to your strategy, that is the way that I would say it's the best to go forward. Illustrate that cost of carbon, those abatement costs, and find the lowest abatement costs possible.
Yeah, I love that. So +1, really like it's a first very simple calculation, really see like how much spend you have, take the average price of carbon per ton right now in the EU around like 60, 70 tons. That's very conservative. It's going to go up again in the future. But then you have like a first price tag to say, okay, we have this much spend and maybe millions or sometimes billions in carbon taxes already, or something that's at risk where you need to pay taxes. And then you have something to work with. And when you bring it down to every single supplier, that's where you can really then say, okay, when we benchmark, we have like 5 different suppliers and one brings so much more costs in carbon. Does it really make sense? And when you move away from this maybe very tangible, okay, that's a 1 CO2 number per ton. But if you also, we have a lot of companies think about innovation and adaptation and moving forward into a future that's very fast changing right now, then it's really all about what also Nicole said, to start the conversation, to have transparency and really bring in a tool. And I think climate data and decarbonization strategies can be very much be that tool, or that's what we see for our customers, to really find the partners that are the most resilient, that are the most adaptive, that are more future forward looking, and that are already going towards, okay, being a data-driven company, and that help you to really bring in low carbon products that reduce risk costs, but then also so much more better fit into the future and really sustain businesses and bring in new business models. So that's what we see all over again, that it's really a blueprint for getting into action for the future.
Nice. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, there's so many questions then also coming up, but also a lot of insights that I think people also need some time to actually digest. So we will also be sending out a short wrap up, like an article of this session, of course, as always. And I mean, I hope really, Nicole, fingers crossed, that we will meet again back in Berlin next year, then also for Climate Transformation Summit 2026. So everybody interested, you will also get information on this via the email follow-up. And then also stay tuned. So we have interesting discussions coming up, the next choice event, for example, with TeamViewer, where we will be looking at more accurate greenhouse gas accounting through what we also talked about today, supplier-specific emission intensities, and many, many more coming up. And so with that, thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you so much, Lara, for all your insights, your knowledge, your great energy. And everybody else on the call, thanks for the interactive pieces, for your questions, for your interest. And yeah, let's stay all together motivated in this very sometimes challenging world, I would say. But then have a nice day ahead. Bye.
Thank you. It's really great to have this intersection from Sweden, Switzerland, and Germany. Love it. Have a good day. Thank you. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.